What we're going to talk about today is the law of cosine. We've used the law of sines to find triangles that were not right triangles. And remember, on the law of sines, we could use any two angle, side, or angle, side, angle. And we could also use side, side, angle. Now we're going to work on the one that is called the law of cosine. And the law of cosine, what you need to recognize about the law of cosine, it is used when you have a side angle side relationship or a side 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 relationship. So if we have these two things, we're going to use the law of cosine. The good news with the law of cosine and the law of sine is you never have to use the law of cosine twice on one triangle. All right, let's take a look at these. All right, so first thing we're going to need to do is to write down our formula for the law of cosine. There are actually three formulas. I honestly don't memorize all three formulas. I follow a certain rule I'll show you that I go through, but these are your law of cosine. I'll probably pause it at this point, but it all depends on what you have, on which one you're going to use. But here are the three things. A squared equals b squared plus c squared minus 2 times b times c cos of a. Now, I told you when we started talking about this, remember my frowny face I put on this formula? This is why. The formula is very involved. Now, this formula right here is also the law of cosine formula. This is just one that's centered around angle B. And then the third one is the same formula, but it's centered around angle C. So I'll give you some time to copy this formula down. A squared equals b squared plus c squared minus 2 times b times c cos of a. And then the b formula is b squared equals a squared plus c squared minus 2 times a times c cos of b. And then finally, cosine c squared, equals a squared plus b squared minus 2 times a times b cos of c. Seems like a lot that's going on, but maybe my way will help you recognize these a little quicker. So here's what I do. We're always going to be either looking for an angle or we're going to have an angle and we're going to be using that angle. So I build everything around the angle. And I actually call them bookends for my own purposes. This is nothing you're going to read anywhere, but I call them bookends. So if I'm using the cosine of it, let's just say I had angle B, for instance. What I mean by the bookends is the formula is going to end with B, and the formula is going to start with b squared. So I call those the bookends. Now, to be honest with you, the rest of the formula is adding or multiplying, so the order does not matter. The only thing you have to get right is the minus 2. And the rest of the formula is populated with the other two letters. A squared plus c squared, a times c. And what I'm saying to you is this. If I would have rearranged anything other than the negative 2, the formula is going to come out to the same thing. So let's just say I said a squared plus c squared minus 2ca. It really doesn't matter because this is multiplication of two terms and this is the adding of two terms. So the only way I can mess this up is if I mess up the negative 2. So I base everything on the angle that I either have or the angle that I want to have. And then whatever that is, I've got to set the other bookend with that side. So we have to be involved in that, and then the middle just kind of falls together for us. So there you go. Hopefully I've stalled enough for you to have this formula down. If not, you can go back and look at it on the video. So here we're looking at triangle ABC. B is 35, C is 31, and A is 162 degrees. So I'm going to do my best to try to make this thing look like this. I drew my own triangle. Yours is not what you're looking at here. This is your first example, but I created my own triangle. You're welcome to copy my triangle, but this is essentially what we have. B is a little bit bigger. Side B is a little bit bigger than side C. So I'm going to make this angle B and this angle C, because this means angle B would have to be larger than angle C. Right, I'm going to label the parts that I have. Angle A is 162 degrees. Side B is opposite of angle B, so that would be this side, 35. And side C is opposite of angle C, so this one would be 31. So the parts that we have to this are two angles, or two sides, and the included angle. This is a side angle side relationship. And when we have the side angle side relationship, we have to use the law of cosine. So the angle that I have in this case, and read our information, find the length of A, so we're looking for this side over here. But the angle that I have here dictates which of the three formulas I'm going to use. Since I have angle A, I have to use cos of angle A formula, which means it has to start with A squared on the other side. This is how I reason through my formula, and the rest of it, like I said, just falls in place. B squared minus 2 times B times C. So this is me constructing the formula. I don't have to do this every single time, but what we do is we fill in the parts we have. We don't have A squared. We do know that B is a measure of 35. We know that C, I'm going to run out of room, so let me just move this over a little bit. We do have C, and C is 31 minus 2 times B times C cos of A. Well, A is 162. So we can actually put this entire thing in our calculator, and our calculator knows the order of operations, and it's going to do it right. But I'm going to go ahead and go through this step by step. I don't want to jump too many steps on this thing. So what we end up with is 35 squared, which is 1225, plus 31 squared, which is 961, minus 2 times 35 times 31. I'm going to do all those at one time. This would be 2170. Now, the temptation here is to want to come in and combine these three terms. But remember, the 2170 is part of cosine 162. So I don't want to do that. So I'm going to do 1225 plus 961. This is 2186 minus 2170, 70 cos of 162. And I am going to put all of this in my calculator here because it's about to turn into a really funny looking decimal anyway. So what I'm going to do is 2186 minus 2170 cos of 162. Make sure, again, that you are in degrees. If you're not in degrees, you're going to have an issue. Now, order of operations. My calculator knows the order of operations, so it's going to do these perfectly for me. But you need to know the first thing that needs to happen is the cos of 162, then the multiplication, and then the combining. So what I end up with is A squared equals 4249.79. And then A needs to take the square root of. And keep in mind what you have here. You have a much larger angle. You got a 162 degree angle. So it's considerably larger than the rest of these points. So we do this, and angle or side A equals, and we're rounding to the nearest inch, so this does not round up. So this is approximately 65 inches. So as we look at this one, we want to keep in mind our sides as well. This one is a side-side-side relationship. So it tells me that side L is 20. Well, this is clearly my smallest side, so we're going to label that one 20, which means that this would have to be angle L. Side K is 89. That's clearly my largest side, so this would have to be angle K. And then that only leaves 81 to be this side. So we have our triangle labeled here. So since we have our triangle labeled, we now need to decide which portion we're looking for. So it says we're looking for side K, or angle K, excuse me. So that would be this, which means we're using the 89. So whatever I'm using decides what we're going to choose here. So this is going to be cos of K. Well, K is unknown, so it's going to stay unknown. So this equals, I'm going to write the formula one more time for you. After this, we'll start just filling in the formula. So this is cos of K, and then the other side of the bookend is going to be K squared. And then it's just the other two letters. It's going to be L squared in this case, plus M squared, minus 2 L M. And then, of course, the cosine should be touching that, but hopefully you've got that idea. So now we're going to plug in our values. K squared is 89. And we are looking for an angle here, so we know we'll be doing an inverse. And this is a side-side-side, by the way. I forgot to mention that. This is a side-side-side relationship. That's why we had to use the law of cosine. The good news is you're not going to confuse it with the law of sine, because if you tried to do the law of sine, it's not going to go anywhere. So here we go. Side M was 81 squared minus 2 times the L value, 20, times the M value, 80, cos of K. So here's where we have to be aware of what we're doing, because if we don't, we're going to make a mistake on our division. We're going to not be dividing when we need to. So you're welcome to do this in any way you want. This is the way I choose to do it. So I have 89 squared, which is going to give me 7,921. And I like to put these two in together. 20 squared plus 81 squared. I'm putting those both in my calculator at one time. And this is 6,961. Now, when I'm searching for K, I actually really like to just move this over right now. I know there's still a part to solve, but to keep myself from making a mistake, which is a common mistake, I like to just move these right now. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to move the 6961 over to the other side. When I do that, we get 960 equals. And now I'm going to do what was highlighted in gray all at one time. That's negative 2 times 20 times 80. And that is negative 3,200 cosine K. So what I need to do, oh, I put 80. This should be 81. Should be 81. So that changes things. So negative 2 times 20 times 81 is 3240. So it's negative 3240. So I'm going to divide the 960 divided by the 3240, and this gives me a really weird number. Matter of fact, I'm going to leave it as a fraction. I don't want to retype this number. So I'm going to divide by negative 3240. And I'm going to leave it that way just for a little bit. So we're at 960 negative 3240 equals cosine k. So in order to get rid of cosine, we need to use the inverse cos. What I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So I'm going to take the inverse cos of that fraction. And all I did, the reason why I did that is I didn't want to carry rounded numbers. And the longer I keep rounded numbers out of the equation, the more accurate my answer is. So the cos of this value, the cosine cancels this, angle K is equal to 107.2 degrees. And that would be the answer to your second example. Leave it in that fraction form, and you keep the rounding out of it just a little bit longer. All right, let's label what we've got here. Looks like we got another side. M is the second largest side. O is the largest, so let's just label these. This is 57, which would mean this is angle O, which is the one we're going to be looking for. This is 56, which means this is angle M. And this is side 19, which means this is angle N. All right, I always like to point this out. This is very close to an isosceles triangle. Matter of fact, we can get a pretty good guess on these angles when we get towards the end, and we should know, since this side's 57 and this is 56, one, O is bigger than M, but very, very slightly bigger. So keep those things in mind. Right now we're only looking for one angle, though. We're looking for angle O. So we're going to skip rewriting the formula for these last two, and we're just going to go straight into constructing with the values in. So we have to use the O because that's what we're interested in. So I'm going to go cosine of angle O, and I'm going to go on the other side. This is my bookend thing, and this is going to be O squared. So I've set the bookends with my O. That means the rest of it is populated with the other stuff. So it's going to be 56 squared plus 19 squared minus 2 times 56 times 19. Notice I didn't even pay attention to the order of these things. As long as I have the -2 where it's supposed to be, then I'm in good shape. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do the 57 squared again, this side. So this is 3249. And I'm going to do the 56 squared plus 19 squared. Straight into my calculator here. So this is 97, excuse me, 3497. And I'm aware that there's this part over here, but I just don't want to deal with it. Don't want to deal with it just yet. So what I'm going to do is to subtract this 3497 over. And by the way, this is not how we'll do it if we're looking for a side. This only applies when we're looking for the angle. So keep that in mind when we do this next example. But for now, we're in good shape. This is -248 equals, I'm going to just take all of the stuff in yellow and put it in my calculator, with the exception of the cosine, of course. So what I'm putting in my calculator is -2 times 56 times 19. This comes out to -2,128 cosine 0. In order to get my cosine by itself, I need to divide both sides by -2128. And just like on the last problem, I'm going to leave this fraction alone. I don't really want to deal with this weird looking fraction. No need to even reduce it. I see that they're both even numbers. What I am going to do though is I know a negative divided by a negative is positive. So I'm going to change that to a positive. So cosine of angle O equals that fraction. And I am looking for an angle, so I have to use my inverse cos. Inverse cos to this fraction. Well, on the right side, these obviously cancel. So we're about to learn what angle O is. Encourage you to use the fraction mode on your calculator again. So when I put this in my calculator, I learn that angle O is approximately, let me change this symbol, is approximately 83.3 degrees. So 83.3 degrees. And we know M is going to be something just smaller than that. And at this point though, we actually, if you like the law of cosine, you could use it again. I wouldn't suggest it, but you could use it again to find M and N. But we could actually use the law of sine because now we have an angle and an opposite side. So we could fall back and use the law of sine. I prefer the law of sine. Most people do. All right, this is the last example we're going to take a look at. Again, I've constructed my own triangles here. You can do your own if you don't like the way mine looks. If you think my degrees are off, that's fine. Remember, it doesn't have to be to scale, but you do have to make sure you use your formulas appropriately. So I'm thinking U would be this angle right here. That feels like about 112 degrees. And then what we have is side T, which is 12. I feel like this is the smaller side. So if that's side T, then that's angle T, which means the last one is V. And side V is 87. So as you can see, this falls into the side angle side category. So if we have side angle side, we have to use law of cosine. And we are looking for side U. That's the only thing we could solve for at the moment. So as we look for side U, we have to use angle U. So we're going to go straight to the formula. Set the bookends here, as I call it. Cosine of angle U is 112. Let me reemphasize this. That is a number. If you wanted to convert it to the number right now, you could. I'm not saying you have to, but you could. Now the U value we do not know. So we're going to call that U squared. And at this point, whether it's T, whether it's V, it really does not matter. So we're going to call this 12 squared plus 87 squared minus 2 times 12 times 87. So this time we are going to take, I hate to call it a shortcut because it's not a shortcut by any means, but what we're going to do is we're going to take the entire right side and put this in our calculator. We really could go one step further. I really am not suggesting doing this. There's a lot that gets lost, but you could actually take the square roots and put the entire thing in your calculator. And it would be u is equal to the square root of all that stuff. I'm going to just do one piece at a time and then take the square root afterwards. But I'm not saying you can't do that. If you do that, I'm just telling you, please take your time, make sure you do it right. So I'm just typing in 12 squared plus 87 squared minus 2, and you got to make sure you use your parentheses appropriately. 2 times 12 times 87 cosine of 112. Close the parentheses on that. My calculator knows exactly what it should do on the order of operations. So when I hit enter on this thing, I get 8,000. I get 8,495.17857. And then the last step is to take the square root of both sides. And we learn that side u is equal to, ends up being 92.169. This tells me to round to the nearest inch. So we will take the answer, y is approximately 92 inches in this case. And this makes good sense. 112 is clearly our largest angle. U is our largest side. We should also know that T is going to be our smallest angle, and we've got to recognize that V is going to be the medium angle. Right, you've got a few examples on your own to work on. Remember, set those bookends. It's the angle, either the angle that you have or the angle that you want is going to decide which of the cos formulas you're going to use. You guys have a Delta Math assignment. Good luck.